Welcome back. Our next candidate is one of a few who stand out because they've never held elected office. But Carly Fiorina says her business experience, including running Hewlett-Packard, gives her an excellent education for the White House. And did you know she's also on a diet? Not because she needs to lose weight, but rather to motivate someone else.
Hi, I'm Carly.
I'm Joan.
What is that?
It didn't take her long to notice the breakfast on the table at the airport diner, considering in her family, many of the traditions center around food.
I like to cook. I like to have big dinners, big breakfasts, and I love having dinner parties. Whether that means pizza in the kitchen or by the pool, or whether that means, you know, a fun big dinner party where I pull out my mother's china. That's what we like to do. We like to gather and eat. Now, maybe that's pretty typical for Italians. I don't know. But
lately, though, Carly Fiorina says life has been a bit different when it comes to choosing the food that both she and her husband eat.
My husband is a diabetic, and so about 2 months ago, he decided, or maybe it's 3 now, but about 2 months ago, he decides, much to my great delight, that he is swearing off sugar, which was really hard for him because he loves sweets. And so in solidarity to keep him going, I said I would too. And because I knew competition with me would be more effective than my nagging. So anyway, he stuck to it, and I've stuck to it, but it means I can't have a Belgian.
But she doesn't let that get her down on the long campaign trail that can affect every candidate now and then. Instead, the former CEO of Hewlett-Packard says she thrives on the interaction.
The most fun is talking to voters. I mean, it really is. And I mean, this is fun.
Although understandably, she does need time to herself.
I have to spend time in the morning being quiet and contemplative, and I have to end the day the same way. It's a noisy, long day. So, and my husband and I, you know, we enjoy our conversations early in the morning. So if I'm with him, then we have our conversation, and if I'm not, then I call him up.
Her husband, who she met while working at AT&T.
I kept thinking, wow, in this vast company called AT&T, there must be something that will solve this problem. And I just kept asking people. And eventually somebody said, you need to go see this guy, Frank Fiorina, because he's a technical expert and he works at Bell Labs and he's working on some interesting new technology and maybe he can help solve your customer's problem. So I went to go see him. And I mean, he was really cute, I have to say, but I was more focused on the fact at that time that he took me seriously. And we actually did solve the customer's problem, and the rest is history.
And that history includes a marriage proposal that she says may be unconventional, but certainly perfect.
He had 2 little girls, Tracy and Lori, and Lori had helped him pick out the engagement ring, the wedding set. And he had planned, I learned all this after the fact, but he had planned something a little bit more traditionally romantic. But she was so excited about this that we were sitting in the car in his mother's driveway, my future mother-in-law, and Lori was in the back seat. And we sort of pull up in the driveway. We're there for Easter holiday. And she's bouncing up and down in the back seat with great excitement. And I said, Lori, what is wrong with you? And she said, Daddy, Daddy, aren't you going to ask? So then the cat was cut out of the bag.
While that was a special memory and joyous time, her experiences have not always been filled with happiness. Fiorina talked about the pain she and her family endured while she was running for Senate in California.
I had just finished a long battle with cancer, a hard battle, and actually was not well, although I didn't realize it at the time. I'm 100%, but I hadn't fully recovered and ended up in the hospital 2 weeks before the election. Interesting. So I also looked very different. I started out bald, literally. We had recently buried Lori. She struggled with addictions, as so many people here in New Hampshire and throughout the country do. So, so I was in a different place, physically and emotionally.
And she says those experiences gave her perspective about what life is really about.
Life isn't measured in time. You know, we all have as much time as we have. That's not how life is measured, and it's not measured in wealth or possession. I think life is measured in love, in moments of grace, which I pray for every day, and in positive contribution.
A challenge to maybe one day run for president, although when she was young, she never dreamed of it.
Several little girls have come up to me and said, you know, I wanted to be the first female president, but it's okay if you go first. And I think to myself, wow, that's really impressive. I mean, I certainly didn't have ambition like that at that age. Actually, I loved being a kid. I remember very explicitly knowing that being a kid was really great, and I should savor it. I didn't want to grow up. I had kind of a Peter Pan complex.
She grew up, of course, but as Carly.
My older sister was named after one grandmother, and her name was Clara Hall. I was named after my other grandmother on my dad's side, Cara Carlton. My mother decided that Clara and Cara rhymed too much. So I was going to go by Carlton because my sister couldn't go by Hall. So I became Carlton, which is an old name in our family, but all men. And then it got awkward at a certain point. You know, I would get sent in for physicals with the boys. I got a draft notice. Oh my goodness. Literally. And so my mother had always called me Carly as a nickname. When she was mad at me, she would call me Carlton. When she wasn't mad at me, it was Carly. Carly, that's how she called me. So I kind of just went over to Carly.
And has never turned back, keeping one very important message in mind.
My mother said to me one morning, what you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God. And it was sort of a promise. You have God-given gifts, and it was also a challenge.
So did you know that Ohio Governor John Kasich couldn't even sit still when he was talking about his wife? Like a lot of the candidates, family and friends have defined this Republican's life, and it's also helped him to keep perspective, even during some of the toughest of times. At lunch with Governor Kasich, a few themes were repeated throughout. One, whatever happens with his run for the White House, his family, friends, and faith will still matter more than his place in political history.
And I don't know where this is going to take me. I mean, I could win, okay, and I could not win. But there'll be something that will come next.
That attitude does not come from indifference, but rather a belief that there's a higher power at work.
My parents were killed by a drunk driver, and so I was 35. And it was very, very difficult for me because I'd always worried that they would be killed in a car accident, and then they were. I had been involved in the church and all that, but I didn't really understand what that really meant. And so when this happened, I had a young minister who my mother really liked come to the hospital, and after a couple days started questioning me about where are you on your faith. And when I answered the question, he said, well, it's pretty clear you're nowhere. So right now there's a window of opportunity to try to discover what this means to you. And the window's going to close because you're going to get over this accident. And why don't you try to check this out? So I have devoted 28 years of my life, as a major part of my life, to trying to build a relation. First of all, I didn't even know if God existed. If he did, does he care about me? And all that kind of stuff. So I just constantly am at that. And so what it's done for me is it's given me perspective so that when, like this, I mean, so this doesn't work. Okay, cool, man, I'm going to be dead soon anyway, and I got a life to lead in the next life.
A life here that has seen its challenges, that he's used his faith to deal with.
So it's helped me to build a more solid foundation that my life rests upon, and I'm really very energized by it, particularly around, I'm very energized that people would understand that for me, you know, when people think about religion, they think, uh-oh, you know, what are you doing? You know, what do I need to know? You know, but it's not that for me. It's a sense of hope and strength, perspective, purpose. But, I mean, I tell you, my faith's been tested, and it ain't fun, and I don't want it to be.
And Kasich's perspective made others at the table open up to him as well.
We had 3. One passed away.
Of what?
She had water on the brain, hydrocephalic, and when she was 30, it got blocked, and she died instantly, leaving 3 small children.
Well, how'd you guys do?
How are we still doing? years ago.
How old are the kids?
19, 17, and 16.
And you're taking care of them?
No, we're...
You don't see them?
It's a whole big story, long story. Like you said, you could write a book. A sad story.
Boy, I'll tell you. If there's not hope of a better life yet to come, there would be no purpose to this life. I mean, when you hear about that stuff, that's just, God darn it. Remember when we were kids? There was like nothing.
Nothing. No worries.
You know, there's a couple things, though. And look, I don't want to be tested, but, you know, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. All things work to the good for those that love the Lord. I mean, you don't know how this is all going to turn out in the end, and we don't know why these things happen. You know, he didn't make it happen. He allowed it to happen. I don't know why, but, I mean, there's just a lot of pain out there.
But Kasich also considers his beliefs to be his own. He works hard not to push them onto others.
You know, it's funny, I have 2 or 3 or 4 really close friends who are agnostics, and I don't really care. I mean, I'm not going to convert them. I mean, it's not up to me. But a lot of my friends are very deep into the faith, too. But in an intellectual level that's really positive. It's not sort of like, you know, like one of my buddies said, if somebody walked into my bakery, and first I'm a baker, okay, if somebody walked into my bakery and said, make me a cupcake, I may not agree with their lifestyle, but it's like my job to be in business. And, by the way, if I think there's something going on that I don't like, well, maybe I ought to pray for them rather than giving them a lecture. I kind of like that.
But also a lot of good, he says, including his family. And you can tell he's sincere when he talks about how he met his wife.
So I come walking in, like I come in this door, I come right in this door, and she is sitting there with a photographer, and I come in, I say, hi, how are you? And she says, good, and I kept walking, I walked right out through the door over there to where my top aide was. And I said, I have just seen the most beautiful woman in my life. You got to come in and make an excuse. And so she's younger than I am, 12 years, and so I had a very delicate, you think if I can do this, I could balance a budget. So over time, she said, well, you called me and said how much you appreciated my coming in and taking your picture. She said, no one else bothered to call me. I thought that was odd. And so then I finally asked her to go to lunch. And over time, she called her mother and she said, this congressman's asked me to go out to lunch, and her mother says, you can't go out to lunch with him. You know nothing. Go out and buy Time or Newsweek magazine and read about it before you have lunch. And from that day forward, her mother, for I don't know how many years, 20 years, always gave her a subscription to Newsweek magazine.
And now that he's running for president, he realizes even more how much his family means.
For the first time since I've been traveling, I'm starting to, I'm not home. And so it's bothering me a little bit. But what are you going to do? I can't not go.
And when he does go, he tries to make sure he's still connected to home.
Homecoming dance? Is that a little stressful?
Yeah. No, they're going to be okay. I'm going to try to call one of their teachers here, I think, when we're done here. Because I'm not going to tell you why, but I'm going to call one of their teachers. but I just want to, my kids don't know I'm calling, so anyway, I just want to have a nice conversation. It'll be fine with homecoming and all that. They'll be fine. You know, my biggest challenge now is to let go, and my wife says when I'm like badgering them and her, "You're driving me crazy. Leave me and them alone." Okay? Because we can't control it anyway.
So they really want you to become president?
Yes.
In such a big Republican field, some candidates have had a hard time breaking through. Former New York Governor George Pataki did take part in this series, but dropped out of the race in December. But at least he got to sample some of the airport diners' famous food.
I'll sneak some of your hash. I hear it's great here. So.
Hash reminds me too much of Washington.
I think you're being kind. At least hash is edible.
And while Pataki is no longer in this race, he says he is not going away and will continue to have a voice as citizens of the United States go through the process of choosing its next leader. Now, Mike Huckabee says he's pretty comfortable when it comes to being in front of television cameras. In fact, his work as a political commentator says it's much easier than his years as governor of Arkansas. And he also says that his years out of office, it's his wife who's been waiting for him to pursue a shot at the White House once again.
I don't hear so well anymore. It comes with age, and loud music played years and years and years when your parents told you to stop, and I didn't.
Like so many of a certain age, Mike Huckabee's love of music was born with a black and white TV and the start of the British invasion.
When the Beatles came and were on the Ed Sullivan Show, I knew that night I wanted to be the fifth Beatle. And so I started begging my parents for a guitar.
His parents didn't have a lot of money, but by age 11, his infatuation with music had blossomed into an obsession, and his folks reworked the family budget.
But my parents ordered an electric guitar from the J.C. Penney catalog. The whole rig, the guitar, the amplifier, and everything with it, was $99. And it took them a full year to pay for it. They paid a little bit each month to pay for it. And that's my first guitar at age 11. And I was so excited, played that thing till my fingers nearly bled. And then I, at 12, took up the bass guitar because I figured weren't many kids my age playing bass, so a lot of kids were trying to play guitar. And I knew that if I played bass, I'd probably always have a gig in a band.
And he's been playing the guitar ever since, one constant in a life that has seen a lot of endeavors, starting with broadcasting.
That was really my background. Most people don't know that, but I started in radio at the age of 14. And that's how I paid my way through junior high, high school, college, and graduate school, was doing radio. And then later got into television, even created a couple of community television stations, ran an ad agency. And it was from there that I went into church work and did that for 12 years, and then into politics. So sort of full circle. And then I went back into broadcasting. And I love it. It's an incredibly fulfilling kind of career.
And while many identify the former Arkansas governor with politics, others do know him best through his time in the media.
Miss you on Fox.
Thank you. I miss it too. I had so much fun doing that show.
Yeah, it was great.
I met terrific people, a lot of folks I never thought I would ever get to meet. Some of my favorite guests were the people that folks were shocked to see on my show.
Yeah.
You know, Bradley Cooper and Meryl Streep, and Melissa Etheridge. People that don't necessarily agree with me or my politics, but they were wonderful people, and just had some terrific experiences getting to meet people that I never would have met otherwise. And then as a musician, getting to play with some artists I never thought I would meet, much less play music with, and to be on this stage with everyone from Leonard Skinner to Def Leppard and Toby Keith, and you know, even the late Andy Williams, Willie Nelson, the group Yes, when Chris Squire was still with them. I mean, there's some amazing experiences. It was just terrific. And also, I do miss the paycheck.
As a youngster, he might not have envisioned a foray into politics, but he says that all changed with fatherhood.
And then when my kids were little, and as they started growing up, and I'd see what they'd come home with from school, and I'd look at the world they were growing up in, that's when it started hitting me. You know, I don't want to be up in the stands watching this country change so dramatically, and me on the sidelines doing nothing about it. And so my wife and I took a long walk around our neighborhood after many months of reflection and prayer and thought, and decided, you know, we're going to come out of the stands and get get on the field. We may get our jerseys dirty and may get bloody and beaten, but, you know, our kids are worth it.
And his biggest champion is undisputed. That belt goes to his wife of 41 years, Janet.
My wife actually has always wanted me. She's believed that I should do this, that I was called for this. She was mad at me in 2012 for not running then. Now, she later said something to me that in 41 years of marriage she's rarely ever said after the election, because I told her, I said, here's why I'm not going to do it, and here's what I think is going to happen. And when it did, she said to me, you're right. And I didn't hear that ever before, and probably never again in all these years of marriage. So, but no, I've never had to worry that she was kicking and screaming all the way through this process. And frankly, I would never run for office if my wife were against it.
You are very smart, dedicated, honest. Are you too nice to be president?
Well, I was going to quote you on everything you said until then.
He may be a nice guy, but Huckabee learned early on in his career that politics isn't beanbag. After winning his first election in Arkansas, his Democratic opponents welcomed him to Little Rock with a bit of a prank.
The day I was sworn in, I went to open the door to the office, and I couldn't get it open because it had been nailed shut, literally nailed shut. And it stayed that way for my first 59 days as the elected lieutenant governor of the state. That was my first introduction to being an elected official as a Republican. I'd get on an elevator and people would get off. I'd walk down the hall, people would turn and go the other way. It was the most lopsided political state in the country.
Huckabee, though, is a man of faith, and he's inspired by people as well. And he points to a pledge made by a former president, a Democrat, JFK.
We're going to send a man to the moon and bring him back in a decade. He did not live to see that, but I did. And I believed America could do anything, because I watched Neil Armstrong put his feet on the surface of the moon, and I'll never forget it. It was a magic moment for me as a kid.
But these days, Huckabee finds inspiration in simpler places as well. An example of that, perhaps captured perfectly with the last question of the day.
What's your favorite thing to do with your grandkids?
I love to read to them. It reminds me of reading to my kids, which I did every single day. And frankly, I just like to watch them because they make me laugh. I mean, they just make me laugh. My wife and I say often, we now understand when we keep the kids for any length of time, we understand why God gives babies to much younger people. The energy required to handle toddlers is extraordinary, but it's the most fulfilling exhaustion I think we ever experience. But I find there's something affirming to me when I look at my grandkids. It's almost like God saying, I'm not done yet. I'm still bringing them in. So, you know, there's something here coming. You're not going to be here to see it all, but don't worry. I'm making some more. It's kind of nice to know that.
Now, presidential campaigns often bring unique challenges to both the candidates and their families. That's true of Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, and he learned quite a bit by watching his father, Ron Paul, run for president, including how to dress.
The one thing I do like about campaigning is I usually just wear my jeans and my boots, but today I thought I had to try to win some votes, so I got dressed up, you know. So.
Attire notwithstanding, the senator from Kentucky is working hard to change his title, but the name apparently will stay the same.
How did you get your name? Do you know the story?
You know, the interesting thing is a lot of people think I was named after Ayn Rand because a lot of libertarians like Ayn Rand, and she's an individualist, or was an individualist. But it wasn't really. I was Randall. I was Randy as a kid, and then my wife said, you're too big to be Randy, now you're going to be Rand. And I said, well, said, as long as she'll stay married to me, I'll do what I'm told, you know.
Your wife is beautiful.
Thank you.
Do politicians select for beauty? Because really, most politicians who run for office, their wives are so beautiful.
Well, mine is. I married up, as they say. But I think I wooed her with something else. I had some kind of charm, either that she had a vision problem or something. I don't know. But no, I met my wife in Atlanta when I was doing a year of general surgery. And I met her at a party, and we actually had a connection because of literature. And, you know, I enjoy reading, and that's what we were discussing when I first met her. And she was an English major in college, and she's now written a book, and she just had her book published this year.
Despite the Pauls' success, they still reside in a small Kentucky town, and that was a decision that was made right out of medical school.
You know, we could have gone anywhere, big city, small city, university, but I'd grown up in a town of about 13,000. I rode my bike to school probably every day through 8th grades, you know, from kindergarten to 8th grade. And so I wanted my kids to grow up in a smaller town.
So do you own a horse?
We had horses when I was a kid. My dad had horses, and we had Shetlands, and they're mean, and they will bite you. And also, horses are better if you ride them all the time. We had horses, and we wouldn't ride them very often. But then we'd go out, and we'd try to ride them bareback. And they didn't like having us on their back because they weren't used to being ridden. And you know how the live oak trees in Texas and the South are really low limbs that come almost to the ground? They would run you under the limbs to try to knock you off. So none of us really excelled at horse riding, and I never had. After that, I didn't have a great love for getting horses when I could.
And like a lot of kids, Paul concedes at times he could be a handful.
You know, when I was a kid, I was like some boys, rambunctious and didn't always listen, and particularly in school I had a lot of extra energy, and sitting around wasn't my forte. I was good in school, but the sitting around kind of cooped me up a little bit, so sometimes I would probably be more exuberant than my teachers would have preferred, I think is the best way to put it. But some of that you grow out of, and I think what I recognize from that is I think we've gone too far in what we do to boys who are sort of loud and exuberant. We all want to put them on Ritalin or something, you know. Everybody's got to be on a pill, and maybe just boys are boys sometimes, you know, and we ought to have to tolerate some of it, you know.
You used to coach sports with the kids?
Yeah, I tell people the one thing I will not reveal is my win-loss record.
Well, that's okay.
Somewhere that's public.
Yeah, it's probably, everything's public anymore. You can't hide anything.
Having gone through that, which was the harder part, dealing with the kids or dealing with their parents?
Yeah, you know, I guess one of the reasons I did is I liked sports growing up. It was a chance for me to be around my kids. I was a physician, but most of my stuff was non-emergent, mostly eye surgery, cataract surgery during the day, occasional trauma to the eye at night, but most of the time I was able to make practice and go to games. I liked being around my kids, I like sports, but I also I have a strong sense of people need to be treated fairly. And I can remember when a kid sometimes not being treated fairly, and the dad who's the coach plays his kid every inning of every game. His kid bats first. Everything is, and I think a lot of dads and probably moms too don't try to treat people fairly, and I think government ought to be the same way. I mean,
in his off time, Rand Paul likes to exercise, but his iPod probably isn't filled with the type of music that you'd assume.
You come from Texas, you live in Kentucky, and it amazes me. I heard that you don't like country music. What kind of music do you like?
My staff has told me that's ruined the whole election for me. I've got no chance now. Now, we were down in Haiti, and I go with a group from University of Utah to do some surgery, and so we were down there, and in the operating room a lot of times there's music playing, and so I just made some wisecrack. I said, anything but that country music, you know. I grew up more in sort of the classic rock and roll kind of, you know, Beatles and Led Zeppelin were a little before my time, but sort of that kind of stuff. And then, you know, still listen to more of that kind of music, classic rock and roll probably. So, but a lot of it's crossover now. The country and rock is sort of blended together, you know.
As for a bucket list, Paul isn't the type to have grand visions of skydiving or mountain climbing, and says what he's doing now is its own kind of adventure.
You know, I look forward to a time when the pace of my life is a little bit slower, and we'll see how that goes. That kind of depends on what I convince you of. I don't want to convince you too much, but I want a slower pace of life.
What you wish for.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Letting your guard down can usher in some pretty memorable moments. Still ahead, some of the most unforgettable exchanges from years past, including the question that brought one former candidate to tears.